Welcome everybody to an episode of my podcast, and today I'm really, as I'm always excited and delighted with all my guests, but really excited today because we've got the awesome, I'm going to get this wrong, Aragorn 𝘨𝘠𝘧𝘰𝘳𝘦 on today, where we're going to talk about all things Metaverse. There's a lot of chat in the market around Metaverse, NFTs, Web 3.0. What does this mean? Are we going to go into the world of the Lawnmower Man and Tron? Reference there for those that remember.
That's barely millennial stuff.
Well, I'm Gen X. I'm a Zennial apparently. So we'll see. But yeah, this is going to be, I think, an education for me as much as hopefully the audience. So Aragorn, really great to have you on. Before we kick off, do you want to give a bit of an intro to your background and how you got to this point in terms of entering the metaverse? Dare I say?
We would need an extra podcast for that, but I'll try and do a short one on it. So first of all, thank you, Alex, for having me. It's really a pleasure. Actually, it's funny. This is the first podcast I'm doing in my new role as such. So super happy to be here. But my new role is all about doing this kind of stuff. So I hope many more to follow, and you'll have the premiere. So my background is I've been a salesman for a long time. I initially started working in tech. Went to Oracle, then I went to LinkedIn, had a very good run there until I left the company in 2016. And I basically started working for myself as a trainer. And that went from sales training and public speaking training to social selling, which, you know, with my background at LinkedIn made a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And then I started to do that online. But the truth is that my hobbies and my passions have always been, I'm a very early adopter. You know, I'm the kind of person that had an Alexa or a Google Home in their Alexa, don't do anything.
According to Wikipedia,
no, Alexa, stop.
Don't do anything.
Yes, he's a very early adopter, having all that stuff in my house. I got my first virtual reality headset on a pre-order, got the DK2 Oculus, then I went to the Vive, which at the time was like, I don't know, 1,300, 1,400 euros to order, pre-order, twice as heavy as anything you'd get today. But that was my passion. And I always wanted to combine the two. And then when the pandemic hit and my social selling business took a hit, which is a story for another podcast series. And I had an opportunity to move into a new business niche with a friend of mine who was an Unreal Engine developer. And that kind of went on for a while. And then, you know, 2 months ago, we broke up, or we broke up, not a relationship like that, but we separated. And then one of my clients, which is 𝘨𝘠𝘬𝘯 and your open metaverse, they said, we want to hire you right away. So I moved into the role of CMO with them. And that's where I've been for the last month. So that's a quick thing. But the great thing, I made a jump here. So your open metaverse, the company I work for now, 𝘨𝘠𝘬𝘯 is the real company name, but your open metaverse is really what we're all about. Is that perfect place for me where virtual reality, crypto, basically all technological innovations, artificial intelligence, all comes together. And I still get to do what I do best, which is talk this kind of thing, do sales, and build relationships.
Yeah. Awesome. And likewise, I was an independent around the social selling world and the pandemic hit, and it was a fun time, right? And I'm now where I am at in actually a client that then has become an employer. But again, we can talk about that offline maybe. So let's, I guess, where to start really, because it's kind of come from nowhere in, I guess, the public domain. But the concept of the metaverse, I guess, in the gaming world is not necessarily a new concept around, I guess, you know, Fortnite, Roblox, you know, people even citing kind of Second Life and SimCity kind of way back when. And certainly from my perspective, you know, I follow Gary Vee on social. He kind of went kind of nuts all over NFTs, which seems to have then kind of morphed into, they seem to be becoming synonymous in terms of where all of this is going. So for somebody like me, who's a layperson, doesn't really understand all of this, what if we can start with what the hell is an NFT, and then why is that started to segue into this very public conversation about the metaverse, if that's the right way to look at it? Tell me if I'm wrong. Which is
no. That is actually an interesting take on it, because if you're absolutely right. I mean, the metaverse, although the metaverse you could, I mean, when did the metaverse really start is a very complicated question to answer, but I would perhaps say, you know, it started with World of Warcraft, which for those people that are into gaming, it was the first real MMORPG, massive multiplayer online role-playing game with millions of people playing it, and basically building a Second Life, which is another game that came out shortly after, next to their real life in a virtual space. But this is all inside of games, and these are all basically closed off islands, right? And if you're in the game, that's where you are. Everything you have in the game is in the game. And even the skins or the cosmetics or the way you look or what you do, ultimately, it's still owned by the gaming company, right? You might pay for a skin in World of Warcraft, and they might say that it's yours, but the reality is that it's still their intellectual property. You can't take it anywhere else. You can't do anything with it. Even if you wanted to, you couldn't even try because the code is inside of the game. And so you're asking me about NFTs and what they are. And I think that over the last few years, the metaverse has suddenly become a thing for a bigger audience. I mean, I first read about the metaverse, I think, somewhere in 2012, when virtual reality started its new run-up, because it failed in the 90s, and then with Oculus, the company Oculus, and what's his name? I always forget. Lucky Palmer, you know, bringing back this tech. Suddenly, people started to think about the future again and how the internet might evolve into something more. And then this all came together, but it's only been recently that the metaverse really became an issue, a topic again. And it's at the same time where we're in this crazy period of a second crypto wave, so to speak, all around NFTs. So now to come back to your question, what are NFTs? The simplest way to look at an NFT is in my opinion, is look at it like a label. A label that is hooked up to a ledger that cannot be torn off. It's very clear, and on that ledger it says, and this is unfalsifiable, whatever your label is connected to is, and to whom it belongs.
Okay.
Right? So what an NFT allows you to do, and this is why it's so groundbreaking, especially for the metaverse, is that it allows you to make a virtual asset, object, or anything really you could think of in virtual space, because we're very unlimited there. And you can say, look, this is the original. I made this. This is unique. This is authentic. And if you see any others like this, it'll be a copy, if you can't even make a copy of it. Because, I mean, I'm not the techiest of guys when it really comes to the in-depth technology behind it, but that's the gist of it. And what that allows you to do is that for the first time, because we know, I mean, we come from a time where, you know, you and me probably have been pirating software and music for years. You know, this is our generation. And you could still do that. But now for the first time, it would be possible for you to say, well, look, I have this MP3. Imagine we still use MP3s. You could say, look, but this is the original, or this is a original from the original batch given out. Basically, it's the same thing as if you buy an expensive vinyl now from the Beatles or something like that, and it's one of a limited batch. And that now is possible in the virtual space, online. And that's why NFTs are really, really, creating a whole new world of possibilities. Does that answer the question?
It does, and I thank you for explaining it in a simple way, I guess. And I guess the interesting thing is that, again, from the layperson is looking at what's happening in the art world, that these NFTs are being are printed or being coined or whatever it is, and then being sold, or teenagers are flipping them for tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I guess that most people are kind of asking the question, why? And then I guess it's translating that into the broader business world of how this may be applicable. And I guess it's the underlying technology in of itself, which is built on the blockchain, correct? That is the applications that then could be used across multiple things. And I guess Gary Vee has talked about this, and there's talked about smart contracts, the legal space, for example, around actually identifying who owns who. Gary's even talked about you could NFT your house.
You could
for example.
Yes. So initially my explanation as I gave it to you for NFTs is one that mostly relates to virtual space. But of course, there's much more possible with NFTs. Because NFTs could, in a real sense, also be used to replace some mechanics that we have right now for identifying ownership traditionally, right? So, like for example, owning your house. Right now, you probably have a lease contract, or you have your mortgage, stuff like that. Technically, it would be completely possible to buy a house, pay in crypto, and then get your ownership through an NFT. Right. And if you do it that way, you could technically completely get rid of any other institutions that are involved with that process. And this is really where the power of blockchain and crypto, and I know these two terms are very often used together, but they're actually really not the same thing. And I shouldn't even use it right now because I'm saying crypto, but NFTs and crypto is basically blockchain currencies.
Yeah.
Only work if they're extremely decentralized, which is why you could make a serious case that right now the only real crypto is Bitcoin, despite there being so many others that are called the same. Then you have the NFTs, which is another blockchain usage where you basically label things, and the idea behind it is that if you do it that way, you have a dependable system, if it is properly decentralized, where you don't need other institutions, organizations anymore between me and you. So I could buy your house directly, we could agree a price, and you can transfer the NFT to my name, and it will be in my name 100%, verifiable. So it's definitely possible, yes.
It's kind of fascinating in terms of where we're going to be in 5 years' time, 10 years' time. Medland, I've got a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old. When we're grandparents of an age, hopefully we make it that far. Kind of where this will all take us. Why then has kind of the explosion of NFTs almost, from my perspective, in terms of what I'm seeing on social, in terms of the conversation, become synonymous with the metaverse? It seems that people are kind of talking about them in parallel as if almost they're one and the same thing, whereas they feel like they're two, as you look at it, very, very different things. But why do we think that is?
Well, I think a big part of that is the growing sentiment around the world, especially right now during the pandemic. I think that's even strengthened, that we can't really trust the powers that be. We can't really trust our governments, etc. We can't really trust big organizations. And whether that is true or not, it's not something that, I'm going to give my opinion on right now, but it's a sentiment that has grown. And so people are looking for ways to get back in control of everything that they're involved with. My mother is telling me, I was there yesterday, she says, Aragorn, what if the banks suddenly take control of your account? You won't have any money if you don't have any cash, because I don't use any cash, right? So, and the truth is that that's where, for example, crypto and blockchain come in, because Bitcoin is really right now an alternative where you could be in control of your own cash again, and if the banks could do nothing about it if you have it on there and you have a way to use it, right? So basically you can get banked without having other influences from outside. And then when we bring the metaverse in, the metaverse is a container, basically a container label, I'd say right now, for anything to do with, the next evolution or revolution of the internet. And that brings in, and the thing there is that why is NFT so closely related to it now is because it just feels very natural for people that if we're going to a next iteration of the internet, after all the the scandals we've had the last 10 years with our data being abused by companies like Meta, formerly known as Facebook. It's almost like Prince, formerly, artist known as Meta, formerly known as Facebook. Anyway, but and of course Cambridge Analytica and that stuff during the American elections. People don't trust these companies anymore. So if we're moving to an internet that will be even further, deeper integrated into our lives, where, next generations will live partially in a virtual world with a virtual avatar, even though, the boomers and up and the way to the millennials don't really see how that would work. Younger generations are aware of this. Basically, your age and mine, downward, or who are still involved with tech, we understand that this can happen, but we don't want to trust our data anymore to these big companies. And then NFTs and blockchain itself suddenly becomes the perfect solution to fix that issue. and it's just come at the right time. So it's really, oh man, I get, oh, the hairs on the back of my neck go up because I get chills, because we're living really in a quintessential time where all these different technologies that are sprung up are coming together to create really a brave new world.
As Aldous Huxley wrote way back when. So what? Again, this is where I'm struggling in my limited intellectual capacity to kind of start to understand. I understand the metaverse, but let's just, for those that listen and don't, let's give a very, a quick kind of summary. What is the metaverse?
The metaverse, I'm still coming up with a short definition of it, because ultimately the truth is that it's unknowable what the metaverse really is.
Okay.
I mean, imagine looking back now to the late 90s when the internet started to rise, and the first forms of social media sprung up. The first forms were just online forums with profiles, right? It was the first time you'd have a digital profile telling who you are that was accessible to other people. And at the same time, we had, the rise of mobile telephones. And I recently did a talk at Blockchains, and I showed a video of Dutch people who were asked in the streets in 1998, would you want a mobile phone? And they all said, no, I don't want a mobile phone. Imagine that. I'd be somebody calling me when I'm on my bicycle, or I'm not that important. And, oh, if I get stranded somewhere, there's always a farm or a phone cell near where I can grab a phone. Why would need a mobile phone? The truth is those people had absolutely no way of knowing what mobile telephony together with the internet would morph into, what it would mean for their lives, how it would impact them. They couldn't imagine that people today walk around with a screen in their pocket that tells them their bank account data, their personal data, that serves as a corona check when they go into a building, that allows them to chat and talk with friends or keep up to date on their emails from work, or do crypto and all the other crazy stuff you can do with your phone. I mean, people are playing Pokemon Go, which is basically adding a layer to reality, while they're outside. And so they couldn't imagine. So if you ask me right now, what is a metaverse? And I know that a lot of people listening to this podcast are going to be super disappointed because, we're finally getting an answer. No, I'm sorry, you're not, because we cannot know what the metaverse really is.
Okay.
However, if you ask me right now, based on the knowledge that I have today, what should people expect from the metaverse? Then I'm telling you right now, it is, yes, as many people say, just the next iteration of the internet, but at the same time, it's also going to completely change our lives, because our lives will be even more integrated into a virtual online world that will allow us in some ways to have more freedom. And what I personally think is a very important aspect is that if you look at the last 15 years, social media, they're called social, but they've also led to a lot of issues in terms of social behavior, community, because people might feel that they're connected, but they're also further apart. If you look like online toxicity and things like that, you see that because people are not actually accountable for things they do, they also behave in very strange and unsocial ways. Whereas I feel that the next iteration, the metaverse, will bring a lot of that back, because it will bring a lot of non-verbal communication and the ability to be intimate back and into the virtual world. I know that's hard to imagine for a lot of people, but that is what's happening, because it will bring the whole internet experience to a three-dimensional space, and it will integrate more senses. And therefore, I ultimately believe that it might be the first step into a great new world where we can actually interact. And I haven't even started on the potential impact it might have on our environment and our climate, because I know crypto is known for being bad for the climate, generally speaking. But when you look at new technologies there, that's changing with going from proof of work to proof of stake. And if we have virtual worlds, imagine that a few years from now you're wearing glasses and you, like a Pokemon Go kind of environment, you see a layer over reality. Imagine you wouldn't have to have a television anymore or a screen for your computer, because it's something that's created by your glasses. That means that no factory has to produce it. We have to mine no silicon for the chips that are inside of it. And you could do that with a lot of stuff, right? So it would have a potential tremendous impact. If you've ever watched Star Trek and you've ever watched the planet of Vulcan, you might have wondered, there's nothing here. These Vulcans are super advanced, but if you look around, you only see mountains and really artistic buildings, and they just teleport around. How does that even work? Well, I always thought that's impossible, but now I realize that it's possible if all of that is virtualized.
Yeah.
So anyway, we're getting. This is a very long answer.
No, it's not. And I think what I picked up on there, I think is a really neat way of kind of describing it, is that it's just taking the internet into the three-dimensional.
Yes,
I think that's a nice way to help kind of people understand that. I guess the next question is that if we go back to your point around World of Warcraft, for example, World of Warcraft fundamentally owned your avatar, owned you in that environment. Is that, I believe, if I'm right, the concept of the metaverse is that you will own you, and then you can take you, a bit like, I guess, the NFT example, into whatever world that might be. But surely someone somewhere is still owning and powering the environment in which you are going into. Yeah, no, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I'm thinking about that, and it's a great question. And first and foremost, I'm trying to find a way how to explain this. If you look at the world today, right?
Yeah.
You live in a country, and your country might be part of a continent, or like in my case, I'm still part of the EU. I'm sorry, Alex. Okay, and you might be part of a bigger whole. And so I might be Dutch, but I can travel across borders to Germany, and I can take some of my stuff with me, perhaps not everything, and I can still identify there. Yeah. But the rules might change, right? Yeah. The rules might change because there's a government that's in control of those rules. Yeah. But ultimately, my identity and my personality, I own that, right? Okay. Metaverse is not going to be much different. Your profile will be like a super profile that will be in a blockchain and might even move between blockchains, because just like the real world, what you'll see ultimately is that the metaverse will not be just one open space. There will be, again, different territories, right? There might be your open metaverse, what we're building. Yeah. And there might be another something, for example, let's say in the DJ world, there's another metaverse being created, which is called 𝘨𝘰𝘯𝘦 Galaxy, I think. Okay. 𝘨𝘯𝘦 Galaxy, I'm pretty sure. And that might be a different space with a different set of rules, just like there's different rules in the Netherlands versus Germany, and different rules in the EU versus the United States. And what they own, I mean, yes, the rules of what's possible within those environments will be owned by not organizations that are behind it, because this is another thing where blockchain comes in. It's very important to understand. Yes, there's two things that play a role here. First of all, your data as a profile, who is your virtual personality and what does he own? That's in a blockchain. And that blockchain can also be owned by the people that have the blockchain. In that way, in the future, you will see that ownership and intellectual property of a blockchain will be transferred into this blockchain, into this NFT blockchain. Basically, like shares are being sold today in a company to shareholders. And so anybody that's on that blockchain that has a profile there and that owns tokens in that blockchain to use in that ecosystem will also be an owner of the blockchain itself, and therefore an owner of all the data. And that will be verified. So that data is safe. But you wouldn't be able to show yourself in the metaverse without servers, and infrastructure. And those will be owned by somebody else. And those will be services that will have to be bought and paid for by companies that are creating meta spaces in these metaverses. Right. And so if you would like to exist outside of these official meta spaces, but a little perhaps like the movie Tron Legacy, where they go off the grid, then you would have to host that yourself. Right. With all the limitations that come with it, just like in that movie where they don't really have any roads, so they have to, it's a little bit like that. Okay. Does that clarify it a little for you?
It does. I think, again, the way that you made the analogy between countries kind of makes sense. So if I'm then trying to again bring it back to for listeners maybe trying to make it more tangible. If we take your LinkedIn profile for example, the theory behind it is that fundamentally that could be your business profile in the metaverse, and no longer does LinkedIn/Microsoft own that. That's your business profile, which you could then take to different countries /meeting rooms /metaverses, and that's how you present yourself in the business world that is yours, that you can move across multiple platforms or multiple meta spaces, rather than currently what we have to have is multiple versions of yourself owned by different companies.
Yes. And depending on where you go, you'll be allowed to take different things with you. So for example, if with my EU platform and go to the US, I might still be able to use my EU bank accounts, but I might also go to a country where, like China, where I'm not actually able to access that anymore. This is not a perfect analogy, but to give you an idea.
Okay. So what are the current use cases that you're seeing today in a B2B construct, if any? And I would encourage people to go and look at the 𝘨𝘦𝘧𝘰𝘬𝘦 website. It's very cool in terms of how it works. I'll put the links in the podcast. Still can't get this YouTube thing right in the podcast somewhere. But what are you seeing today in terms of the business use cases? And if we put our social selling hats on, where do we? And of course, no one's going to hold you to this. Where do we believe? What do we think the applications might be in a B2B sales and marketing, dare I say it, construct?
Yeah, no, that's another great question, and I know this is one that's on the mind of a lot of people. First of all, let's accept that these kind of changes, they don't go overnight, right? And although I truly believe that a lot of these changes will impact our personal and professional lives much faster and much more than we might expect today, that still means that for some people it will go faster and shorter. If you look at LinkedIn adoption, for example, and you're very familiar with this, I'm sure, you'll see that first industries that really adopted it were tech, and then fintech, more or less that kind of path. And the last people to adopt it were, the social workers, healthcare system. People there really were very, very late. I mean, if you were a nurse or a doctor, you weren't on LinkedIn until recent years. Not very big chance. So the same thing is going to happen with Metaverse. There's going to be industries and where it is more applicable. And so where right now this is already a serious thing is, for example, in real estate and architecture. So there's a whole division of metaverse creation, which is called ArcVis, architectural visualization. And what really is happening is that the whole industry is moving from more traditional ways of visualizing projects and creating new architectural work from a very, analog way, making the drawings and then making a maquette or something like that. Or concept art. That is now all going metaverse. So initially it's still closed off meta spaces where one company might say, okay, we're building a massive shopping mall plus apartments in the center of Berlin, right next to the Second World War monument. This is actually a project that I worked on in a previous company. But we want to start getting more investors on board, and we want to start selling before it's actually built. And so what they did is they basically got a company, my previous company, to build all of it in 3D in Unreal Engine, and then basically made it available for clients and investors to go and visit. Right. So this is not yet a connected metaverse as I foresee it will happen next, but it's an experience, and they could go and visit it on their phone, could go and visit it on their laptop, could go and visit it with a virtual reality headset, walk through it, and truly experience what it would be like when it's actually there. So this is a real-world application where the metaverse is used to sell a product or service, to visualize it to a much more immersive version. Another way that we're already seeing today is due to the pandemic, a lot of events are going hybrid. Right, where might be a real life component or not at all, and there's an online component. And one thing a lot of us will recognize is that the online, the first experience we had with Zoom and Teams and stuff like that, it's very two-dimensional, and it's, let's face it, it's very easy to get distracted. You know, you're sitting behind your computer, you think that this speaker is going to be super interesting.
Yeah.
The reality is that somewhere halfway through his talk, you realize you completely drifted off and you're on your Facebook profile again. Right? So immersion there again is very important. And even though, you know, some generations might really not see themselves going to an event using an avatar or in a three-dimensional space yet, I can tell you that, you know, the next generation, kids are playing Roblox and Minecraft now. For them, this is already second nature. So going to an event, experiencing that way is definitely is already happening. Now, one of the things that really held that back was the fact that, you know, 6 million years of evolution taught us to see somebody in the eye and recognize their facial non-verbal communication. It was very important for how we interact. And so right now, it still feels like you can't do that in the metaverse, so you need video. But the truth is that if you look at tech, just the last few months, that's really about to change massively. I mean, there's this other super big startup that's going really hard called 𝘨𝘯𝘯𝘬 that has the ability to scan you into a virtual avatar, which is super realistic. And then there's another company called, I think, 𝘨𝘰𝘯𝘬𝘯 Technologies, just off the top of my head. And they developed a tech where they can make super realistic facial expressions on metahumans in Unreal Engine. So the only next step is that just like we now have to train our Alexa or Google Home to recognize our voice. Oh, here we go again. Just like that, within a few years, I'd say 2 to 5 years max, it will be possible to use your phone, scan your face, make several facial expressions. It will map your face, and then you can stick that on your avatar. And when your webcam is looking at you and you're doing something, or when you're wearing some glasses, it will recognize your facial expressions and translate that into the metaverse. So that means that whole part of nonverbal communication not being there is going to be fixed. And then suddenly being in a virtual space with a photorealistic colleague, having a meeting and looking each other in the eye will actually be almost the same as in the real world.
You've already answered my question I was going to ask in terms of, because fundamentally you can create any avatar that you want in the metaverse. And I've been tinkering with Ready Player Me, and already in terms of creating an avatar. So whilst it's not scanning your face, you can, with your phone, it will help map your face against your avatar. So when you're doing the move, you know, raising the eyebrows and the smiling, your avatar is mimicking what you're doing. Let alone, I mean, my kids, whether it's right or wrong, but it's inevitable, they really enjoy the TikTok filters. They're not recording videos, but they love putting the different facial features on TikTok, and it follows you around and does what you do and all that kind of stuff. So I think absolutely, you know, the more I'm thinking about it, and that's why I'm sort of keen to get you on, the more I'm hearing you kind of speak about it in a way that makes sense to me. It's kind of almost exciting, the evolution of where Microsoft could take your LinkedIn profile and how that might work in the business world. You've seen what's happening in Teams. You know, Teams are now spinning up your avatars in there, and that, imagine this then becomes, you own it, but you can connect it. And I guess that's what Ready Player Me is all about. You create your avatar, but then you can transport that into different places.
I mean, look, I just realized I didn't really answer your question very well, because you asked me, you know, what are there today for applications business-wise, and I gave the real estate one, but just to give a few other ones, just to supplement my answer. For example, in the Netherlands, there's this big construction company, BAM. They're also they're international, I think. And a few years ago, they built customer experience centers where people would go for a whole day with an advisor to basically put together their house as it was going to be built. You know, they select the kitchen, they select everything in one center, but it's all physical. All of that stuff can be virtualized, right? You wouldn't have to leave your home. You and your partner can just log in on your laptop or use your new PlayStation VR and go and visit the center like that. And they're already making that stuff, and you can put together your new house. Another example, fashion. I worked with a very amazing fashion project called Semblance Project. You can look it up online. They're creating, you know, the future of fashion, where they will have virtual catwalks so that people can visit from across the world fashion shows if they can't actually be there. And with new tech, you know, Unity just week showed off online their ability to scan fabrics and then recreate them virtually, where they move realistically, they have the same texture realistically. the only thing that's missing is the haptic feedback from touching it. But trust me, that's not far off either. Just a few years. So it will be possible to go into a fashion store very soon, and you will be able to upload your avatar, which might be, a realistic representation of you in size because you went to a MetaHero event or a MetaHero store down the street where they scanned your whole body, or even you did it with our company, BeamUp. Yeah. And then you can just try in fashion before you order it, so you know how it looks on you, right? Cool. You can upload your avatar and check out what it would look like on you. So and stuff like this already exists. Yeah. It's already there. But right now, it's for the early adopters, right? It's like for people like me, that first 10%. But it means it already is there. That means that it's going to grow, it's going to mature, and more people are going to start using it. And within a few years, it'll suddenly be mainstream before you know it.
Yeah, it's super exciting. And I was like reading, I think a piece the other day about horse racing, for example. Yeah. I think it's 𝘨𝘯𝘬𝘯𝘬 or something. They're creating a horse racing world where you can go and buy a horse, buy a horse, right? Yeah. You own the horse, and then you're going to make money in this virtual horse racing world. So I started thinking maybe I can finally become a racing trainer or this or that. We've got I guess motor racing, all these different types of applications. But I'm super excited about where it's going to go from a B2B perspective. You touched on the environment. No longer do we necessarily have to get on airplanes now anyway because of the Zoom Teams environment, but certainly I reflect on the film The Kingsman when they had all the agents and holograms sitting around the table. It sounds like that is eminently possible, that you could have a physical business meeting between yourself and a potential client, but you're doing it in your open verse or wherever it might be.
I think what a lot of people don't realize is that, for example, Google Glass development didn't stop after the initial problems with privacy. Mm-hmm. What did happen is that they moved it to a B2B space, and they kept developing. There's just been a massive contract for HoloLens. Microsoft's basically Google Eye alternative that allows them to overlay a augmented reality layer over what you're seeing on reality. So there's also this gray space. It's not all only in the virtual space or only in the real space. There's also this connection being built. And here again, NFTs can play a massive role, like we discussed before, because you could NFT your house. Yeah. There's being connections made between the physical world and the virtual world. And that's also the metaverse. And so tech, where in the movies we see holograms sitting there and we're thinking like, how are we going to project this? That's how we always thought of it. Now it's actually different. We really realize there's different solutions to that. If everybody is wearing contact lenses, and already this is tech that's being developed right now, where we can overlay another layer on top of our reality, we can all experience the same thing if we're wearing these lenses, and we can see you. I could see you sitting 3D in your studio here next to me. Yeah. And we could have a real conversation. So I think that tech is still being developed. Google is working on that. Microsoft is working on that. There's a company called Magic Leap who have been silently developing some kind of groundbreaking tech for years now. And that's all really coming to a first level of maturation, I think, where it will be something that's actually usable for people. And that's ultimately going to really change how we interact with our world and with each other.
Absolutely. And again, magically, you kind of got onto the final bit of this episode that wanted to was I also believe that will be the bridge between this is what is some people refer to as XR, so extended reality, and that segue between you're still here in the physical, but you're having things projected. And I think I reflect back on when I got married many moons ago. My wife kindly allowed me to get the Oakley Airwave, which was the Oakley goggles with Recon.
I remember those.
Recon, they weren't cheap. Recon, unfortunately, have now gone bust. But there was a little head-up display literally under my eye here, which you could then see where the map was. It was dangerous how fast you were going. So there's me going down the mountain trying to go faster and faster. Yeah. That was when did I marry my wife? 7 years ago.
And you felt like you were controlling Airwolf.
Yeah, exactly. It was very cool. Control the music. You see text message. Unfortunately, it's gone bust. So now I have a redundant piece of technology which doesn't do anything. But I for one believe that is going to be the most accessible, because you're right. Well, there's HoloLens, Google Lens. I hadn't even given the thought process around PlayStation, Xbox. This is already part of kind of the gaming fraternity as it were. So if people want to learn more about this more broadly, that's not even English. If they want to learn more about this, where can people go to find you? Where can people go to find Beam-Up? And so what's the best way to reach out?
Ooh, if they want to find more, well, your open metaverse of our website will offer a lot of information, but obviously that's twofold, because on the one hand, it's mainly focused right now on our NFT and our token, our blockchain tech that we're using, but that's at yom.community. So YOM.community. That's where you can find everything around your open metaverse. Obviously, there's a website, Beam-Up, which is more like the agency where we build these kind of experiences, metaverses, for clients and brands. So let's say that you want to build the Ask Alex metaspace where people can come on Friday to actually see you and meet you in a three-dimensional space, or like a game where, you might even have a little treasure hunt going on, stuff like that. If you want to build something like that, then, www.beamup.com is the place to go, because that's our agency. We're going to get a new website. I'm happy you like the one as is, but its performance is not really what we want. And we're really updating that to be completely in line with the work we'll be doing. So that's the two places to go. You can follow me, obviously. I'm on Twitter. Wow, I don't even remember my own Twitter handle, but I'm sure you can
put the links in the chat.
You can put that in the link. Anybody that wants information, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. Obviously, I'm there. I'm probably one of the only Aragorns. There's a few, but the only Aragorn 𝘨𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬𝘬 feel free to reach out to me. Everything will probably be in the podcast information that you provide. I'll give you anything you need.
Telegram's a weird place, but we won't go. We won't go there. Aragorn, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for being the first. It's the third time I've had a guest, where it's the first time they've done a podcast in their new guise. So I feel very blessed for that. It's been very informative. To all my listeners, I hope you found it very informative as well. If you want to be on this, you know what to do. If you want people to be on this, again, you know what to do. But Aragorn, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much, Alex. See you in the metaverse.